This is Motovation. I'm Lori Joy Kingwell.
And I'm Chrissy Van. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode. So today we're talking an open road of possibilities. So often we ride with a destination in mind, a route planned out and likely navigation system to rely on to tell us when and where to turn next, right? But what happens when you just ride? What are the possibilities if you simply set out, bags packed, with a slight idea of where you're headed, but with the flexibility of mind to take a random turn at your heart's desire or when your gut just instructs? Well, our guest today, Emma Cases, has done just that in a big way, many times over. She's originally from Sweden, and Emma left her corporate job to take a year to go backpacking through Central America. And through unforeseen events, ultimately, this landed her in her now home in beautiful Belize, where she owns and operates the first ever moto rental company, Alternate Adventures. Emma shares her story that veers course many times, from running an entire farm in Belize to getting on a bike for the first time, which quickly took to starting the rental business, and the incredible steep learning curve that came with it in every way. Her stories are a reminder that sometimes no set plan is the best plan. And having a willingness and openness to say yes to the unknown can yield to a life of deep fulfillment and purpose. This is your motivation.
I'm beyond stoked because at the time of this recording, Lori and I are literally days away from our own alternate adventure in Belize. And that is thanks to our incredible guest today, Emma. What we're going to be hearing today, as you heard in the intro, is a story about leaning into a life of the unexpected, embracing adventure and moving with the turns and the curves that take you to places that you may not have even imagined. So first of all, I want to emphasize that, Emma, you're originally from Sweden, joining us from Belize. So let's go back to the backpacking days and where your first motorcycle adventure began.
Okay, so I was living in Sweden and I had a corporate job. This is like pre-Zoom times, so I didn't get to use Zoom at that time either. And I kind of came to a glass ceiling where I could see that I wouldn't get any further in that company. So I decided to quit my job, and before finding the next one, obviously I decided to go on a trip. And that trip started in Costa Rica, surfing. And I intended to go to Colombia, but found myself heading in the complete opposite direction and ended up in Nicaragua. After Nicaragua, I was suddenly in El Salvador. And once I was in El Salvador, Guatemala was so close, right? So I ended up in northern Guatemala with the intention to turn around and go to Colombia. But then a friend of mine was actually sick and in Belize, so I decided to head over to Belize to help out. And that is how I ended up in Belize in the first place. And I was there helping my friend who was sick for like 3 months. And we were in the jungle with a bush doctor, actually.
Yeah. Very different from
And,
what you would have grown up in Sweden.
I mean,
completely
different. And also, like, the reason why I actually came to help is because I didn't believe in bush doctor medicine. So for me, it was like, I need to like help you to get some proper medical care. And so I crossed the border. I hired a pickup, and the pickup drove me into the jungle, and I walked into this property and realized that my friend was actually in a pretty good place, and that the care that she was receiving was not just like bush doctor stuff, but also actually a lot of like common sense medicine, like antibiotics, like rest, good food, all that kind of stuff. So I was there for 3 months, and after 3 months, she was well, but then I was kind of hooked on Belize. So I ended up staying a little bit longer. And then the owner of this property asked me if I would be willing to just take care of the property for a while. It was like a little small farm. And I said yes, because I mean, there were like a couple of horses, a couple of cows, chickens, and I'd never had a pet in my life. So I
my God,
like,
talk about a hard laugh.
I mean, like, this sounds like a perfect opportunity.
Oh, so, yeah, that's more than pets. That's like that's work in and itself.
Yeah, it was honestly, like, I don't think I've worked so hard in my life. It was a lot of work to keep this up, but it was terribly interesting, and it was definitely a crash course in Belize survival. So I did that for a total of a year, and after that, it wasn't very social because it was out in the jungle, and there was few neighbors, and I needed
your
more
chickens and your horses.
I mean, come on, like, I love people. That's that's the thing. So I decided to continue my journey towards Colombia, but decided to make one stop in Belize, a place I hadn't been to yet, before I proceeded, and that was the village of Hopkins, and which is a former fishing village of a very particular African culture called the Garifuna culture. And so I headed over to just check it out and chill by the beach for a little while, and I got stuck here, and that was 13 years ago.
Oh my, okay. I got questions immediately.
Hopefully I have answers.
This is great. This is fantastic. Mm-hmm. My first question, because I love this, you quit the corporate job and you were like, I'm going to go in, get another job, maybe similar. It sounded like at the beginning, but I'm taking this trip in between. The first question would be, I won't go into many because Chrissy will have questions too. But I think the first one that popped up is that beautiful moment really where, because you said, and then, I was here for a year. At what point did it change from the trip in between jobs to this trip is becoming potentially a completely new life off the trajectory of like what I thought I was headed in?
Right. I mean, that is a great question.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you're great at giving questions. And my answer is probably, I don't really know. I don't think there was like a particular moment, that was like, you kind of ease into it, right? Mm. And I think also like my initial journey didn't have a real end date, right? So like, I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't looking to settle, but I also wasn't looking to return either. There was like really no plan. And I mean, I could never have imagined to end up in the jungle with no electricity and no cell phone coverage, and living like that for a year. If somebody would have told me that, like a year prior to that, I obviously wouldn't have believed it, right?
Would you have thought yourself capable of it if someone said that? Like the believe part, but if they were like, you'll do this, it'd be like, did you feel like, yeah, I could if I really, or was that not even on your radar as far as capacity?
No, I don't think capacity. I mean, I think we humans are capable of a lot of things. You just, like you just have to try it and then you'll figure it out, right? But so no, it was not a capacity. It's not a thought that I've ever like crossed my mind. And also like the surroundings I've been around, like I don't know. I don't know any farmers, I mean, it's simple as that,
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. Well, you get it.
We're very much on the, like Chrissy and I can align so heavily around the leaving yourself open to that part of ourselves. That's like, I can have my goals and I can have aspirations and I can have all those things, but there's also capacities and capabilities that I can't even wrap my head around right now, right, from the limiting belief systems that I don't even know that I have necessarily, that will be cracked open, that will be, unlayered with time and expansion of self and putting yourself in really uncomfortable position, all the things. And so we're so right there with you. That's kind of the best option you can give yourself in this life is to be just substantially open to what could be before deciding that it's not the route for you necessarily, or you could never or would never, because that's you just don't know that for yourself. You just don't know that.
Well,
Exactly.
and mindset crushes so many dreams from the get-go. So having that openness is really opening the door to the possibilities, whereas so many people close it prematurely. Now, not only did you not intend to end up in Belize, but from what I understand, you also didn't start out on two wheels. So how did that happen?
So I was actually terrified of motorcycles. And I think that, so I come from a family that are like far from any motorheads at all. I also had an older cousin that were in a couple of motorcycle accidents, and knock on wood, nothing happened, but that kind of set the tone of what we should think about motorcycles. So I was terrified of them because fears are contagious, and what we are told is dangerous. That's like by our surroundings. This is like very easy to believe. So and one day in Belize, there was a camping trip offered. So I was in Hopkins. I made it to Hopkins, and I met some people, and we're going to go camping in the jungle. On the way to get there was on a motorcycle. So I got to sit on the back of this motorcycle to go into the jungle, and I loved it and hated it both at the same time. Loved the idea of just like the freedom and the smells and that way of travel. You're like so in nature. To me, that was amazing. But I hated the whole idea with the back. That was not for me. So the next day I got myself in the front and taught myself how to ride motorcycles. And that led down a path of the idea of like who's doing anything in Belize with motorcycles. And I did a little research, and nobody was really doing anything. So I figured like how hard can it actually be, you know? So I figured out how to register a business. And 2 weeks later, I was the owner of Belize's first moto rental adventure tour business. And that's how it all started.
It gives me goosebumps, honestly. I love shit like this.
I mean, it's been an adventure, right? Because mind you, I also didn't know anything about motorcycles, right? Like I've been on a bicycle my entire life. I know how to drive stick shift. You combine the two, you basically, you know, in a country that at the time hardly had any vehicles, it was like super easy to drive around and navigate, right? But there was so much learning to be had from that point on. Maintenance wise, understanding how these machines work, what they're capable of, spare parts, what you need to replace, all these things. I mean, I didn't know anything, really. So
what about the business side, even like the learning curve around a business? Did you have some foundation as to that? Because I'm like, these feel like a lot of learning curves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yes. And I have a master in business.
Yeah, you do.
So
there it is.
I do. And I tell
Amazing.
You what, like, honestly, I wish I didn't have it.
Okay.
Why is that?
Yes. Because so Belize 13 years ago was very much like the Wild West. And what you learn in business schools are models that for big corporations and structures that would not apply here. So my first task was to unlearn everything, and everything that should be perfect before I could relearn how to operate here. So it was very hands-on, very pragmatic, very hands-on, very day-to-day solving problems. Very much relying on other people, on community to solve problems. And honestly, even on my customers, I mean, my customers have taught me my initial maintenance stuff. I mean, they would like look at the chain and kind of like, hey, don't you think that should be adjusted a little bit? I would be like, sure, show me how. So I don't know. Sometimes, knowledge is, it's the same thing, right? Like if you don't know stuff, you're ignorant enough. And so you do things that if you know stuff, you actually overthink it. And don't start it. And all you really need to do is to just start it. And if you have models and ideas and know how it should operate, then that might hinder you.
In the wrong context, right?
Yeah, you end up in this like analysis paralysis, right? You know how everything needs to be lined up to actually do it, right?
I'm curious, when you speak to that community, talk to me about the arrival then of this in Hopkins. What was the community like around you, especially as a female-led business I don't really know how common it was for even women on motorcycles at that point 13 years ago, because we've seen a huge shift here in Canada, even in the last couple of years.
Right. Well, we're still waiting for the shift here, actually. Like what we see here at the time, like right now, is women maybe use scooters to get around, but like gear-shifted motorcycles, we're not quite there yet. But 13 years ago, here in Hopkins, there were no vehicles. We had a dirt road. Everybody were on these beach cruiser bikes, like one speed. It was very slow. I want to say I had the first motorcycles around here, essentially. Maybe there was like one or two around. And in the sense, like how I was received, like being a woman trying this, I think I've always, I don't feel that has in any time been to my disadvantage, being a woman here. And I have given it some thought, right? Because it is, like gender roles are pretty structured here in general. But I think possibly that the fact that I'm a foreigner makes people view me firstly as something alien, like as a foreigner. And secondly, like my gender matters, right? So because I am a foreigner, it's not like, it's just, I'm just strange anyway, in a sense, right?
Such a good point and observation, because it's so true, right? You don't get quite put in the box right away, because it's like everything is kind of like, well, we don't know. And so you can kind of make up your own rules, and they're like, that must fit. That must make sense. If they look like they're confident in that, then that must be what they do. Whereas, it's such a cool observation.
Yeah. I think so. I've never really had the conversation with anybody, but we do sell parts here for motorcycles. We do maintenance for the local motorcycles that exist now. And people come up to me and say, hey, Emma, like, this is happening. What do you think? What do you think is wrong? And that feels like very much like a normal conversation. And those people are obviously guys, because other girls don't really have motorcycles and definitely don't maintain them. So
it probably feels really good too, considering your knowledge base was in such an infancy, really not that long ago. And you've learned this trial by fire to be able to bring all this success your way. On top of just you mentioning there being like, I wasn't from the area. Everyone was on beach cruisers. I came from a small town originally where every new thing was very highly fought against if it was not familiar, not the way it always had been. So was there resistance in this change, going from like exactly that dirt road, and then all of a sudden you have bikes whirring around? Or were people generally like, this is great, we're evolving?
So I've seen like this village and Belize in general, right? Like change a lot over the course of 13 years. Like when I first like ended up here, and I would tell my friends and family, I'm in Belize, people would ask, oh, that's cool. In what country is that? Basically, people didn't even know about the country. Like, and I find that like the development that has happened here has benefited a large part of the population. So it's not just like I mean, I came in and I did something that nobody had done and still really hasn't copied, to be honest. But as more people came, other people have also come up with other stuff. And I mean, the economic standard here has drastically, you fell down now, has drastically improved. So, and also like Hopkins Village is like, it's a ridiculously friendly place. Yeah, no, I can't say I have felt other than welcome, always here, for sure.
I love hearing that, because especially just as you describe your journey, I'm like, you landed clearly exactly where you're supposed to be. And now not only through all that hard work, taking a bet on yourself, taking a risk and leaning into all of that, you're creating these incredible experiences for people that come to visit Belize. I've followed you on Instagram for some time. And obviously I know that you cater to everybody, but I think it's been really amazing to see how many like women-led groups that you've had come through and being able to show up on bikes and have an adventure. So talk to me about the experience that you're curating and cultivating for people that come for a visit.
I mean, I love it. That's the thing, and not just groups, but like every individual person, because there's so much in Belize that is still untouched. And there's lots of like little adventures to be had. That like little stops where you can experience like a variety of ecosystems. We also have a huge cultural diversity, and you don't have to travel very far to discover that. And I just love to listen to what people's interests are and try to like exactly design what they like, right? Now, it is true that in the last year or so, we've had more and more women's group coming. And for me personally, that is amazing because, as I told you, there is no real community here, right? So that's kind of awesome. Does that answer your question?
Makes me that much more excited to get there.
Yeah. I can't wait.
Right?
Yeah.
I got a question about when we talked about you, kind of completely taking a real hard left in life. And, that's now 13 years ago. How different has that last 13 years kind of shifted in the person, how you see the world and kind of your perspective on life? Has that greatly shifted, slightly shifted? And what stands out to you the most?
I think I've learned a lot of patience. I think that stands out in the biggest way, just because like living in the developing world comes with a lot of, there's a lot of things that doesn't exist here, right? And they can still be solved. It just takes a lot longer to solve them. And I find that that is something that like you have to adjust to here to sort of survive, because I do see people that try to relocate here and they come with expectations that things would be as efficient as at home, and there is simply not going to be that, right? So maybe they're buying a property, trying to build a house, and then suddenly the materials are not there for a while. The plumber don't show up, nor does the electrician. And, maybe they tell you yes, but they actually mean no. And you're just missing that in the clues that are actually right there. And then it's very easy to get frustrated over those things since you are, know the alternative. And once you start getting frustrated, then that can start spiraling. And then all your energy goes into managing your own frustration rather than actually trying to get something done. So I think that is, and I don't know, maybe that's like becoming older and wiser. Maybe that would come anyway. I don't know. I just have this.
I know a lot of really impatient older people in the city.
Okay.
So I don't know. Yes, if you allow it to, but isn't that a beautiful one? Like really and truly at the end of the day. I don't like the way it comes in, but like, because we're also impatient with everything and everyone. So that's where I say like, geez, we all need a little bit more of that.
Right. Maybe it's beautiful. I mean, I haven't really thought about it like that because it's just the way it is, and you just, like, if you're going to survive here, you kind of have to accept it to a certain extent, right? To a certain extent. I think what it does teach you, and what may be beautiful, is that you learn how to do a lot of things. You learn how to plumb.
Right.
You
Right.
just learn a lot. Like, so I have an accommodation here too, right? So I have a motorcycle rental, but yeah, that opens up new avenues, right? Of freedom and independence, and also a feeling of being capable, I guess, in a sense. I mean, if I can do this, then what else can I do, right?
Well, and
Absolutely.
it sounds like you've kept adding to that repertoire. And I think it's not just, I mean, obviously the catalyst born out of necessity, but I think the beautiful thing about you is this willingness as well, because how many times do people get confronted with an obstacle and then there's another one and they're like, well, it's just the universe telling me to fuck right off and not do this kind of thing, right? And then you're like, oh, actually, this is my opportunity to grow as a person. And then all of a sudden you can see things flowing into your space that are in a positive. You're basically rewarded for overcoming those challenges. I'm curious when you've been, because obviously it's a life of adventure, both in business and in practice, because you're out on the road exploring all these destinations. What's one of the biggest obstacles or challenge or a story along the road or along the way of this journey that kind of sticks out in your mind that you look back and think, wow, like that might have been the one that the willingness really, really is the only reason why I made it through the other side?
Right. I mean, Corona was obviously huge here in Belize because the economy is based on tourism, basically. And so also for us, of course. When Corona hit, I had to really take a hard look of how we're going to do this, because there's no real government support for unemployment. There's nothing. There's nothing here. You are on your own, right? And I took a decision to actually leave Belize for which ended up being a year and a half, simply because so that Cornelia would still have a job. I had to go and make money somewhere else. And that was a really hard time, obviously, because everything I own and my home is here. And having to just abandon that and not knowing when to being able to come back, and when and how it would work. That was, I think that's the biggest question, are we going to get through this?
There were no answers through that whole thing either. No. You're literally in flux. Where did you go and what did you do?
So I ended up in Austria, of all places, which is kind of weird because I don't really speak German, but I don't know.
Now you're fluent?
Well, not really, actually. I feel
like your brain would be everything that we've learned. You'd be like, I picked it up.
Do you speak German?
No, I speak barely English.
Okay.
Yeah, I struggle
funny.
with this
She's
language.
Funny. The Austrian dialect is actually really hard. If somebody speaks what's called Hochdeutsch, which is proper, clear, German, I can understand it and I can get by. But Austrian is really, really hard. It's bastardized, basically. If there's any Austrians listening there, please say that this is the truth and don't feel offended. No, essentially, I don't really have a good answer why I ended up there. I think it was one phone call with a friend and who's Austrian, and I just asked, "How is Europe?" And she said, "Actually, it's not that bad. You can go to the park and hang out with people, right?" So, and then she said, "You should come." So I said, "Okay." So I found a way how to leave Belize, because that was the first obstacle was like to sell a lot of motorcycles and to make sure that there would be
so hard.
Yeah, I had to sell motorcycles, and I had to just make sure that there was a plan in place that would work for a very long time. And the cash flow from those motorcycles would keep Cornelia, my main employee, like fed and like for a while, right? Like before I could find a new job and so on. So that was step one. Step two was like, how the heck do you get out of a country that is in complete lockdown when you're Swedish and you're one of two Swedish people in a country and there is no embassy? It's not really like anybody's coming for you, right? So I spoke to the US Embassy, and they agreed that I could leave on one of their expatriation flights as long as I would just be in transit and leave for Europe immediately, which still meant 24 hours in Houston, because when I landed, there were like 7 flights in the next 24 hours. Jeez. So yeah, it was mad. So yeah, so I ended up in Austria, and I ended up at first on a sheep farm, shoveling sheep shit and driving tractor. And
back to your farming days.
I was just gonna say, you circled back.
Full bloody circle.
Who would have it's so interesting just looking back and being like, oh, you had all this experience, and then it shows up when you need it, where you're kind of, because really it's not like you could have just gotten a job anywhere. Everything was shut down. Farms keep going. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, this job was like basically food and accommodation. So it was just to get me like flowing and getting into it and do something, right? Because you have to start somewhere. Now, this farm turned out to be next to Mattighofen, which is where KTM have their headquarters. So I borrowed a little Suzuki 250 from the 90s and from the neighbor, and drove over there. And I had figured out who was in charge of the test drivers. And I called that guy. I stood outside and I said, like, hi, this is me. I'm here. Let's have lunch.
Yes.
And he met me for a coffee, and I just made a big point about how he needed to give me a job. And about a month later, I pestered him for a month. He did give me a job. So the rest of the season, it was interesting. Yeah, for sure.
Love that shit. Because it is. It's just one of those things where you're like, I want to be there. I'm going to figure it out. Kind of the same thing what you talked about in Belize, where you're like, you either wait or you do. And that's what you even did as soon as you got to sounds like Austria. You were just like, I'm just going to do. I'm just going to like do whatever I need to do to get where, the next thing.
I think also that, a lot of us are afraid to get a no. So we don't even ask the question because we're afraid to get turned down, right? And it wasn't like exactly that the guy said yes the first time. Like, I really had to bother him a little bit. Yeah. And eventually he's like, okay, yeah, sure, here's the job for you.
Because it's not that personal, right? Like, it's that thing of like it's at a personal front if you get the no. But you don't know all the moving parts on their side of the no, and you don't know, and it might be just no that day because of all the moving parts, but you don't know what's popped up in 4 days, which is what you've even done. And that no suddenly is no longer that because things have changed or they see whatever it is, but it's just like, it's not personal. So you just keep moving in whatever direction you need and not take it personal.
Well, and it's also reminding ourselves that if you don't ask the question, it's a no anyways. Yeah. So what's the risk?
Exactly. Right on. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I worked so it was endurance testing. So basically like you drive next year's prototypes on the road with the computer, and basically like they just you need to get up to 50,000 kilometers, about 35,000 miles as soon as possible. Because that is how many miles they need to to get on the bikes to just see like that nothing breaks down. And
so that was your job, is you just rode motorcycles around? That was your job? So what? How do who do I call? Who do I harass?
Well,
to get that job here?
I'll give you the contacts if you want. You'll be
honestly.
You'll be the third woman ever who has done that. Because of
that's so rad.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta say, it sounds more glamorous than it actually is, because it is a very hard job, because obviously like they have deadlines, and the faster they can get these 50,000 kilometers. So basically the bike is moving all the time, and you drive like Monday to Friday or the weekend if you just want to do it as a part-time job. And you have to drive a lot. Like, I mean, literally, like I would eat a sandwich while I was fueling up. Like that's how it was. So it was really exhausting. And also because a lot of people want to do it.
That might take a bit of the sparkle out of the riding experience of it.
And also because it's next year's prototypes, you always have to hide the bike. It's not like you can pull up at the nice motor cafe. Yeah, you do. Because
you're like incognito mode.
Yeah, kind of, but you have a license plate that gives you away. So you always have to, it's a special license plate because it's not really a fully licensed vehicle, right? So you always have to like hide it. So it's like, there's no glamour in it really.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Like the whole experience is so beautifully strange.
It's exactly. And I tell you what, like, so the thing is that because it was Corona, like usually you can take this bike, within a radius of, I don't know, it was 400 kilometers from the headquarters, which would put you in Slovenia, would put you in northern Italy, it would put you in southern Germany. But because it was Corona and the borders were closed, like you like I had to stay within Austria, which, I have seen all of Austria.
You know it very well.
I know it very well. And
you're like a taxi driver. You know all the roads.
Pretty much. And they have some really weird named towns there, I can say.
Name one for sure if you can.
So, for instance, there's a place called Fucking.
Amazing.
Oh.
Can I say that here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You fucking can. Yeah. Actually, we haven't sworn on this episode yet, and that is a record.
I think I had one.
Did you?
Yeah.
We swear all the time. And so the fact that we haven't, what a classy.
I mean, that's incredible. I will try to help you keep that record. I might
I quite enjoy the record of a lot of F-bombs. Feels right. Feels at home.
Good. Well, maybe you should go to Austria.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I know. Off to fucking we go.
Off to fucking we go.
That's
my homeland.
So I actually love the fact that most incredible story, which has a bunch of twists and turns, came out of the obstacle. It's kind of that reminder that when things go sideways in life, it's often where we get the best, richest stories out of our lives. But on the flip side of that question, you're creating this amazing experience for people. What's been the highlight for you on this journey? Because one thing that I can see from just hearing from you is you've proven a lot to yourself over and over again and really have been in this constant state of evolution. So talk to me about the big highlights that you've had.
I mean, honestly, like, I think the whole purpose of this, and what the thing I'm most proud of, maybe, or like most happy about, or feels most purposeful is, and I'm going to go back to my employee Cornelio, because it's seeing his journey of how he has evolved and how his economic standard has improved and the stuff that he has learned, right? So he's been with me for 9 years, and he did not ride motorcycles. He knew nothing about mechanics. And he was doing yard work for somebody, and I watched him, and I was like, okay, this guy is always there. he always moves. Also, like when the owner is not there, the guy is still doing stuff, And so I watched him for a while, and then I approached him one day and I said, like, hey, do you like want to, come and work for me like 1 day or 2 days a week? And he said, yes. And then he said, Miss Emma, I don't know anything about motorcycles. I'm like, do you have a driver's license? He's like, no. Do you know like anything about mechanics? He's like, no. And for me, that was like, it doesn't really matter, because if you have the right attitude and you have the morals in the right place, all the rest, like we can teach and you can learn. And he lived in pretty humble, his living situation was pretty humble. So, and I offered him first a part-time job, but soon enough also like a full-time stable job. And to see like the evolution, how he has improved his lifestyle, and the things he have learned, like the guy turns out like he's incredible at teaching himself things, and to just also like he manages this place when I am not here. Of like getting out of his shell and like coming out of being like timid and just managing this business. That for me, I think is really my highlight of seeing another human through hard work and through always showing up, because in these 9 years, he has not faulted me a single day without a valid reason, obviously, like being sick or so, and for me, that's really inspiring, that if you want to, and if you can really like turn your life for the better. Yeah.
I love that. I also can't wait to meet him.
Yes. And he can't wait to meet you too. But he might still be a little shy when there's like 11 girls showing up.
Don't worry. I'll break them out of their shell.
We get people out of their shell. Yeah. Challenge accepted.
Yeah. No, really, that is, it's purposeful. It's, why are we doing this? We're doing this to have a better life and to, enjoy and if, like the ability to be able to help somebody help themselves.
Yeah.
It's a cool experience.
Yeah. It's that like collaboration of just continually improving each other's lives and quality of life.
Right.
By our relationships and bringing our strengths and their strengths and all of those things coming together. And the collaboration of inspiration, you know what I mean? And then both lives, because of working together, become so much bigger than they could individually.
Exactly.
Well, and I think on top of that, it's the power of I don't know, and realizing that's not necessarily a scary thing in life. I feel as though so many times when we're confronted with something where we're like, I don't know, fear is the first emotion to pop up, where you're really, I think conversely, you're like, oh, this is opportunity.
Right.
And then you've got somebody that understands that parallel, that's like, dive all in. Honestly, Emma, like this entire conversation just makes me so stoked to have this experience and being able to share it with others as well. And I'm sure you're just going to continue to see your business blossom, because honestly, even just from a social media perspective, I've seen on accounts that I follow, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, they've been there. Then I'm following their journey along the way. And it's really this ripple effect of this unified experience that moves across the globe and to these little pockets, and new stories and memories that are made, all born out of this fact that you leaned into the unknown yourself. And we're like, I'm just gonna, your business is aptly named Adventure, and see where that takes me.
Awesome. Yeah. I can't wait for you to see it and experience it.
Well, I think it might be motivation. It's time.
You guys can sing.
Yeah,
it's going to be our other career.
We do have karaoke here in Hopkins.
That's
already done.
Oh, that's going to be dangerous. That is our group's jam. So we took over a American karaoke bar not long ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
They sang the Canadian national anthem for us because
Really?
because we turned it on its head. So
We really did. We really
Yeah.
did. Oh, that's exciting to know. So as I gave a little heads up there, every episode we do our motivation maintenance. This is a little tool people can put in their toolkit, something they can learn from you or integrate into their lives. So what do you have for us?
Well, I mean, I think it's, for me, I think the thing that has brought me where I am is just to just say yes. Say yes to things that are not obviously like you can't really see their end destination, that are not maybe in line with what you thought or planned, just say yes to think. And because it's like opening doors, right? You open one door and you get into this new room, and there's a section of new doors. And every time you say yes, you can go through another door, and new opportunities will open up. And it just, will continue to grow. Yeah.
I love the idea of the doors coming through and there's more doors.
Yeah. And also also put yourself in situations that are not familiar. You have to go into the like a little bit unfamiliar and maybe like make human encounters with people that you wouldn't normally meet, and be open and see what happens. Say yes and see what happens.
Love, love, love that. And lastly, before we let you go, we always like to end on a little quote or mantra. So what's one of yours that you can share?
Oh, wow. I mean, can it be just say yes?
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Or should I say, fuck yeah, I can.
Hell yeah.
Fuck yeah, I can.
Fuck yeah.
Well, thank you, Emma. We cannot wait to hang out with you in a week's time, not even a week's time. So we're just beyond thrilled. And this, our conversation today not only made us that much more excited for the experience, but that much more, just to spend time with you, just get that, and
Same. I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you.
That is your motivation.
You've just listened to the Motovation Podcast with your host, Chrissy Van, and me, Lori Joy Kingwell.
Thanks for joining us along the ride. We've got new episodes dropping every Monday, and we're all about community. So follow us on Instagram at Motovation Podcast and visit our website at themotovation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and full throttle.